Unleash Success podcast, where we break down the secrets of success to give you real tools and strategies that get real results. And now, here's your host, Corey Corpodian.
Welcome back to Unleash Success. If you haven't subscribed to our newsletter yet, just go to unleashsuccess.com, enter your email so you can get all the tools and strategies sent directly to you each and every week. Today we have the honor of interviewing Barney Waters, who is the president of K-Swiss. K-Swiss has been around for 50 years, but they are revolutionizing the industry right now with a recent partnership with GaryVee, providing shoes and sneakers for young entrepreneurs and hustlers. Barney, thanks so much for coming on the show.
Thanks for being here. Thanks for having me on.
I love the culture that you've created in this company. And, you know, as the president of K-Swiss, you're really running a shoe company, but a lot of young entrepreneurs out there want to run their own company. And I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit about your backstory and how you kind of were an intrapreneur for the company as opposed to a full-blown entrepreneur, but why you really appreciated that.
Yeah, I think I've always been a company guy. I've always worked for companies, both big and small. That's just been the way it was. I lucked into a really great company in the UK where I grew up called Lotus, and they were headquartered in Cambridge, and I moved to America with them way back when, 20 some years ago. But just a really successful company, really progressive, and really smart people that I was around. So when I was really young, I was surrounded by just great people in a company that was successful, which set up, I think, my whole career of, you know, I had a great base of learning from them. And then as I moved into the sneaker business, I worked for Puma.
Oh, cool.
In Boston. And again, a company that was really growing fast and just surrounded by great people, super dynamic, and learned a ton. So I think I just was lucky to be in some great situations where I was able to really benefit from being in a company. And then when I was ready to sort of do my own thing, or felt like, hey, I could do more, I could take more of the reins, I found an opportunity to come to California. And K-Swiss at the time had acquired a smaller shoe company. It was called Palladium Boots. And I came actually to run Palladium originally and to rebuild that brand. And I remember asking the K-Swiss people who were recruiting said like, okay, I remember Palladium because it's an old heritage boot brand, but you know, show me what's the website so I can do some research. And they said, we don't have one. Wow. They said, in fact, we haven't got anything. We just got the old original shoe on the wall in the office. We don't have a shoe box. So I thought, wow, that's a great opportunity. So
starting from scratch.
So I think, you know, the Palladium situation was, you know, it wasn't my company, but it was as entrepreneurial as it gets in that there was like 3 of us, I think, originally rebuilding this. And we built it to just over $100 million. And then eventually, they said, hey, why don't you guys go upstairs and take a go at K-Swiss, the mother brand. And so that's what got me onto K-Swiss. So I think I've been in big companies or, you know, medium-sized companies, but I've found my way into situations that are very entrepreneurial. Yeah. And that's turnaround situations, either fast growth or turnaround situations where, you know, you're in the same situation as entrepreneurs or startups, which is like small resources, you know, you against the world mentality, everything's on the line, not a lot of money to spend, and blood, sweat, and tears required. So I think you can find the same comparable situations to entrepreneurship if you pick the right companies. First of all, you need the right company to work for, and I always say sort of go for brand names if possible, because it gives you much more access than a random company. And then within those, can you find the right team that will nurture new people and help them learn?
Yeah, I think having the right mentors is critical to success in any area of life. Yeah. And especially if you're trying to hone in some skills, because a lot of people might be thinking about, you know, I want to be an entrepreneur. And sometimes they say, I don't know where to start. And a lot of us have skills, kind of hidden talents and everything that we can focus on. But understanding how to run a business is a lot different than having a talent or a skill. And so finding the right mentor for business so that you don't make a lot of mistakes. And one of the reasons why we do this podcast is to kind of help avoid those mistakes. So I love what you talk about entrepreneurship, because a lot of people hear might not have quit their job yet, but they want to be an entrepreneur. So you can still be an entrepreneur inside a company.
Yeah, if you find the right situations and you've put yourself into the right companies that are dynamic, that give you opportunities to make decisions. That's important. You could easily get bogged down in a thankless job with a small cog in the wheel. So you need to find situations where you've got a company that will give people decision-making power, or you've got to earn your way and earn the trust of people. This is what I did, is sort of earned it through just results slowly and surely over the years, to be at a point where they're like, okay, we're going to listen to you now. You earned our trust and you get the keys. So, there's a few different paths of how you get to that situation. You can't just walk into a corporation and be like, hey, I want to be the creative director.
Right. And I heard you say something too once. It's just like, if you're not happy with what you're doing, then you should change it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, I mean, bottom line is to analyze your situation. Are you happy doing what you're doing? I've often thought, wow, I'm in this entrepreneur culture now. Every day, all I hear is people talk, and myself talking about entrepreneurship, and people look at me like, why don't you do your own thing? Well, I have my own sneaker brand right now that someone's entrusted in me. I'm using their financial resources, and I have been having a great time. I love the company. I love the journey of what I'm doing. I love being in this culture. The team I work with is great. Like, why would I mess with this right now? So I think there's a strong sort of voice out there about, hey, do your, start today, do your thing. But, really you have to analyze is your current situation good? If it is, then maybe now's not the time. Just enjoy what you're doing. Right. Your grass isn't always greener. If you don't like what you're doing, then absolutely you should start today.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's funny because there's that quote where entrepreneurs are the people that'll work 80 hours a week so they don't have to work 40 hours a week for somebody else.
That's right, yeah.
And, I understand that. I think that's one of the biggest things about entrepreneurship is kind of the freedom. But for you, like, I know you love sneakers and this is an exciting venture. So it's like when you're doing something you absolutely love and you're in control and you're running your own company, it gives you a lot of freedom to be able to express yourself.
I also think that not everybody's an entrepreneur, okay? Everybody likes the idea of it, but, being an entrepreneur and being a successful one takes a certain mindset, okay? And not everybody has it. And and by the way, if you are that mindset where you're like, hey, I don't want to listen to anybody else, I want to make all the decisions and I want to, drive everything myself, then you're not going to do well in a company. Those people, right. That is not a good, person to have in a team environment. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? And similarly, if you don't like risk, and if you prefer being in the safety of a team, then you may not like being an entrepreneur. It might be happier staying where you are. So I think it's worth understanding like what it really takes in terms of the personality type, and ask yourself, is that really you? You've got to like risk. You've got to be a great connector and networker. You've got to have a lot of self-belief. You've got to be really persistent. You've got to you've got to hear 10 no's and be able to go back for the 11th. Are you that person, or are you the person that someone says no 3 times? You're like, well,
it was worth a try.
It was worth a try. I gave it a good go. Right. You may not be cut out for it. So not everybody's necessarily, ready to be an entrepreneur. But I think we're, and I'm part of this, creating this sort of vision of anything is possible, and it's true, it is possible, but ultimately I think you've got to be happy, and it can pay to go get the skills first. So I remember a builder when I was a kid. There was a friend who was going to be a general contractor to build houses, and he said, I'm going to first go and be a bricklayer, then I'm going to be a plasterer, then I'm going to be a plumber, then I'm going to be, so by the time I become a general contractor, I know everybody's jobs, and I know when they're pulling a fast one, or when the pricing is right, or the job's done right, because I've done every job. And
right.
It's similar, if you're going to go run a business, maybe, spending a little time, understanding each of those facets of business, whether it be supply chain, finance and accounting, marketing, product development, social media, and you can learn those skills in a company environment, and then be way more prepared to do your own thing.
Absolutely. So I want to switch gears a little bit, and the revolution that you're creating right now I love, because we talked a little bit about how these big brands like Nike and Adidas go after, celebrities and athletes.
Yeah.
And so you decided to go after entrepreneurs,
right.
and that was going to be kind of like your Michael Jordan. And you chose GaryVee, great guy. I love him. I've been following him for years. Like a match made in heaven, and the Clouds and Dirt line is just absolutely fantastic. And that's another way how I found out about K-Swiss again. I said, like, I used to have a pair in 1999, 2000. I'm actually feeling a little bit older these days now, but it's amazing to have this comeback. So I want to know, what was your inspiration for choosing entrepreneurs?
Well, first of all, I think the main lesson learned was to find an open lane. And in the sneaker business, when you're facing, I describe it as a Coke and Pepsi industry. So we have Nike and Adidas, it's like Coke and Pepsi. So if you come to market with a cola, you're in, that looks and feels like theirs, that's targeted at the same people, you're already up against it, especially if you're a percentage of their size and power. So when you're in this industry, I quickly realized that the biggest, strongest competitor is all about athletics and athletes as their focus. So I knew I couldn't win if I tried to do that.
Right.
And so to be a sports brand is like you're guaranteeing yourself best case maybe number 2, but in reality for us it was maybe 10th if we nail it. And that's just not a good situation. So I think everybody wants to start a business, but first thing to do is look at the market and look at who the incumbents are and say, can I really win? And if not, then maybe pick a different fight.
Yeah.
Or you're banging your head against a wall. At the same time, Adidas had shifted and was really talking about rappers and celebrities as their sort of brand muse, or creatives now. And it stole a lot of thunder from Nike, because the truth is that athlete thing looked a bit old-fashioned when Adidas started working with Kanye, and they had a lot of success the past couple of years.
Yeah, especially with Instagram influencers and everything. If a celebrity posts a picture, and everybody would buy it, right?
That's right. So I realized again that if I get into this who can sign the biggest celebrity game, I don't have the budget. So if I play by Adidas's rules, they set those rules. So by playing their game, the rules are set against me, right? So I would say that, like a Puma is, or maybe a Reebok is competing on who can sign the most famous people. Under Armour's competing with Nike on who's the most athletic. And I would get killed if I take any of them on any of those with where my brand is today. So right over here is an open lane, which not only is it open, but it's also real. So that's the other thing is, the truth is that young people now are aspiring to be entrepreneurs.
Right.
And if you talk to young people, you'll find that it's true. They're trying to build their own businesses. They're trying to be successful. It's cool to be smart now, and it's like the Mark Zuckerberg effect. Like the nerdy kids in school used to get picked on. Now everyone's nice to them because they're probably going to work for them one day.
I mean, it's happening. Every time you turn around, somebody's just doing a startup. It's $100 million. You're just like, whoa. Okay,
so listen, if I want to get you, I'm not going to wear my shoes not wear my shoes, but if I want you to buy into my brand, I'm not going to talk to you about, can I skim 30 seconds off your mile pace?
Can't tell you the last time I ran a mile.
Right.
Exactly.
So, but if I said to you, hey, let me inspire you to be a better entrepreneur, you're like, okay, I'm listening. So we're not targeting a different person. It's the same person. It's just that we're using a different voice that I believe is way more aligned to the truth of what they're thinking. And it just also happens to be an open lane. So
that's a really good strategy right there, is picking something that is an untapped market. Yeah. Right. You did a land grab on entrepreneurs and created a signature shoe line for them, which correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think it's ever been done before. You guys.
I don't think so, not as specific. And also I called it sneakers for CEOs. That was the sort of term I used to make it really clear. Sneakers for athletes, you want to run fast, Nike's your brand. Sneakers for celebrities or cool people, sneakers for CEOs. Which one do you want to be?
Right.
And everyone's like, I want to be that one.
For CEOs.
It's money. These days it's fame and status, whether it's Elon Musk or, and these are people driving culture and changing the world, really. So I think it's become this, entrepreneurs are our heroes now and our sort of rock stars of culture. So I think that's what we've lined up to. And I don't think anybody had done it. And so to sort of further cement it, the idea was create a signature sneaker for an entrepreneur, which was like almost to me, it was the perfect juxtaposition to the athlete positioning, where the formula is sneaker plus athlete is a signature sneaker.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
With the Jordan being the most famous.
Right.
And now any great NBA player has a signature sneaker.
Right.
So I was like, what if we made one for an entrepreneur? And it was almost like, not a joke, but it's like, it would make people go, wait, what? And that's what we did.
Right. Okay. So.
And people did notice.
Before you even get this idea, of course people are going to notice because it's like, it's so out of the box.
Yeah.
Before you get this idea, how do you overcome, the pushback internally? Because I got to imagine people were like, what are you, crazy?
Yeah.
How do you handle that? Like I got to imagine there was some self-doubt, like, is this idea
For
even
sure,
good?
Yeah, yep.
So how do you battle that and then still have the belief to keep pushing forward?
Yeah, so I think you always have to first convince yourself. It's like a pyramid of buy-in. First it's you, then it's your team internally. In our case, it's then a retail buyer, and then it's the consumer. Okay, so it's no point me just going straight out to the consumer and saying, hey, do you buy into this? I got to start with like, okay, is this something I'm ready to go all in on? And there was a ton of risk involved for me personally, but I just really believed it. That's the bottom line. It's like the more I thought about it, I know this is an opportunity.
Why did you believe it so much?
Just because I'm on top of I'm really soaking in culture all the time. I'm always involved in what's going on, whether it's politics, current events, culture, fashion, sneakers, music. I've always been hungry like that, and ear to the ground. Even as I got older, I never lost that, which is, that's my joy, is being involved in all that stuff. I just was aware of what was going on. I've always been able to kind of, I suppose, read a little bit about
people.
Yeah, and seeing shifts of what people are into.
Right.
I just believed it because I could see it, I guess. So
yeah, I mean, if you look at just, entrepreneurship, and being an entrepreneur is a buzzword. Hustle, grind 24/7.
Yeah.
These are things that people always, kind of push out there as it's grown in popularity significantly over, I think, in the age of the internet, because it's so easy to be able to become an entrepreneur yourself.
Yeah, and I think when I started with this concept, it wasn't maybe as big as it is now, because I'm going back to 2.5 years. So the next layer of that convincing pyramid was my own team, and you're absolutely right. It was very difficult. I mean, some people were like, "Oh yeah, I see it. It's great." A lot of people didn't. And it took a long time to convince my own team that this was the right thing to do. And what I learned was that talk is cheap. I was spending a lot of time telling people, hey, this is great, but you got to really show people something tangible. And it wasn't until we did our first, signed GaryVee, developed a shoe. So takes a long time, so I'm jumping real forward for a second here. We did a launch event, and it was a GaryVee launch event at a store on Melrose Avenue in Hollywood. And bear in mind, a lot of people on my teams didn't know who he was.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, this is going back a couple of years. He was not what he is today. I mean, he was, people knew him, but not like it is today.
Yeah.
A lot of my own team didn't know who he was, or they knew because I told them. Well, 500 people showed up and were waiting outside the store. It was like a mob scene. And it was just this amazing event of positivity, of consumer excitement. And that's when people believe. People came into work the next day different than the day before. And I could see in their eyes, they're like, okay, I'm in now. And I realized, man, I wish I'd have done that a year ago. And you know what I mean? So talk is cheap. You've got to show something, not just, people won't believe you. People will nod at you even, but until they see it with their own eyes and experience it, you're not going to get people. And I learned that now.
Yeah, I completely agree. It's so funny. When I went through my own personal transformation, I remember I was telling all these people about the strategies I was using. And they're like, and I'm like, I feel really happy though. I feel a lot better since I've been doing all this stuff. I'm talking about emotional fitness, right? Just mindset, awareness, and understanding the power of my thoughts and shifting my whole life. And everybody's like, yeah, Corey, that's cool. And then 6 months later, basically doubled my income while working less. I bought my dream home, and I got my girlfriend. And I was like, they're like, wait a second, what was that emotional fitness you were talking about? Like they see all the things.
Now. It's tangible.
Right. And so I understand when you do that, and I've always believed that actions speak louder than words.
Yeah.
So, well, in today's day and age, it's about kind of documenting the journey and everything, but also too, like if you don't follow through with the action,
Yeah.
you know, that's what really makes a statement.
Yeah. So I think action speaks louder than words is probably the lesson that I could have used back then that I know now. But we made it through, and I think that it's been successful. But that would be my
Well,
tip.
apparently, I mean, you guys shut down the website because you sold so many shoes in the first minute it was launched.
That's right.
It's pretty incredible. Real quick too, because as an entrepreneur, you know, one of the things I heard that you said is you just cold emailed GaryVee and kind of pitched him on this idea.
Yeah.
But you know that's pretty inspirational because I'd reach out to a lot of people, but sometimes people are afraid to reach out.
Yeah.
Why did you just pick GaryVee and how did that transpire?
Well, I was looking for a while of who could bring this position to life about young entrepreneurship, and it was really difficult to find someone who was culturally relevant, i.e. cool and young, and someone that kids want to look up to or want to dress like, and someone who was a real entrepreneur. I couldn't come up with anyone. I could come up with some great entrepreneurs, and I could come up with some great culturally relevant people, but I couldn't find the combination. I mean, probably the one I really thought is that guy is someone like Pharrell.
Oh yeah.
But he had just done a big deal with Adidas and has since done really well with that. So, but he's a guy that I think is credibly can pull off being a business brain and and he's super cool.
Yeah.
So I just couldn't come up with it. And this guy GaryVee kept coming up in my searches as like, he is the guy who's living this and talking about it, and he's the voice on social media. So, but I was like, wow, you know, he's a 40-year-old guy. He doesn't look like what I think an influencer is. Okay, but the more I kept coming back to it, I'm like, well, he's influencing.
Yeah.
All right, it is what it is. It's true. And that's when I reached out. So eventually I'm like, it's undeniable that he is that guy.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so, yeah, I cold emailed. And again, Gary I think he maybe had 600,000 followers back then on Instagram. Now he has 4.5 million.
Right.
So we've sort of grown with him. So I guess I called him a little early. And of course, I had a great pitch. So I had, do you want to make a sneaker? Now, 9 times out of 10, if you can get someone to read that sentence, they're going to be interested, right? Who doesn't want their own sneaker? So I think I definitely had that on my side.
Yeah.
But I didn't go into the brand's history and the blah, 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 and this is who I am, and I was born as a young child in the coal mines of England, and I just
Or else you might not have ever read the actual important part.
Hey, do you want to be the first guy to have a signature sneaker for an entrepreneur?
Done.
And they wrote back real fast. Yeah, let's do it. And so we met, and you know, the rest is history. And yeah, the first time we actually brought that sneaker to market, we launched it at midnight. The website crashed at 12:01, which is a fun story, but it's not a good look. Especially when you're this old brand working with a dynamic new audience, and they're like, typical, you know.
Was it a struggle to get over that little bump right there, or people were just so excited about it they kind of were like,
I think we got away with it that time. I mean, we didn't do ourselves any favors by having that happen, to be honest. And but also seeing that success was what enabled us as a company to make the right investments to get it right the next time.
Right.
So again, you know, actions speak louder than words. Hey, the website, we put so much traffic to the website that the website keeled over. We haven't done that in years. So let's upgrade the plumbing.
Yeah.
And then that's an easy sign off.
So, I mean, that was a huge success and just incredibly innovative as well. I was wondering if we can go into what is your brand message and maybe some of the top 3 things that you have done to change this brand from what it was to what it is now.
Yeah.
And so that, you know, anybody out there building their own brand can kind of use those tools and strategies as well.
Yeah, I think the first thing I did is I really honed in on the authentic history of K-Swiss, which is a tennis brand. It's an old tennis brand, and it was founded in Southern California. So I used 3 words: heritage American tennis. And because I knew we were authentically from 1966, which is a differentiator to modern sneaker brands, and people appreciate that history. We were American. And other heritage brands were French, like Lacoste, or Fred Perry is English. So I knew that American was also a differentiator. And then tennis was a specialization. You know, if I said I'm a general sports brand, now you're putting me up against Nike and Adidas again. If I say I'm just a tennis brand, my competitive set is shrunk. And then when I say I'm a heritage tennis brand, I get rid of all the kind of modern racket companies. And then when I say I'm a heritage American tennis brand, it's just me.
So you niche down really
exactly.
small.
Specialize to give yourself a wedge, like a reason to exist. I'm the only something.
Yeah.
Okay, so I go to a retailer and say, hey, you know, white sneakers are hot right now. I'm the only heritage American tennis brand, so you've got to have me in the mix. That's a much better story than being the fifth something, or, hey, here's why I'm better, slightly different than all these million of other options you have.
Right.
Like, I'm the only one of this. So I would say answer that question, I'm the only something. And if you can't, then you haven't quite got a clear path. And that gives you a wedge. And once you can establish yourself, then you can diversify over time and expand into the bigger business. So number one, we did that, is like put blinkers on and said, and we divested from the running business. We took ourselves out of some categories and narrowed it down. And then since then, we've then added this modern brand story around young entrepreneurship. So that was phase two, was once we kind of got back in our lane as a heritage American tennis brand, everyone was like, okay, yeah, that's what I thought you were. We go to retailers and say, hey, we're a heritage American tennis brand. They're like, yeah, we know. Yeah. You know, it's like, okay, good, you're back in your lane. Once we'd established that credibility again, then we were like, hey, you know, we're going to evolve that too and modernize it into this position around entrepreneurship, and everyone was accepting of that. So those are the two facets or two sides of the coin of the brand, was the heritage backstory and what does it stand for today.
Yeah. What is your message to your customer right now? You know, the young hustlers, the entrepreneurs, like, why would we want to wear K-Swiss? I think that says a lot about the direction you guys have been taking.
Yeah, I mean, I think first of all, we're creating, first of all, I want to be the brand that you can relate to in terms of how we're talking about what you're going through. So if I talk to you about, hey, this shoe's going to add 6 inches to your vertical, or this shoe's going to make you run faster, or this shoe's what all the cool kids are wearing, you know, someone may or may not relate to that. But if I say, hey, this shoe is for hustlers who are trying to make their best life, and this shoe, you know, they're going to be like, okay, that relates to me. So number one, I want to say, like, we're the brand that's going to relate to you because we're thinking the same way as you. If you're someone who is trying to either be an entrepreneur or it can relate to that spirit. You may be in a company, you may not even have a job, you may be a student, but you've got that mindset. We're going to talk to you in a way you can understand. Then we have to create product that's purpose-built for that life. So that's the thing we're doing now, is we're realizing there are certain aspects of an entrepreneur's 24/7 that we can build shoes for, whether that's all-day comfort, whether it's versatility for multiple situations, like you're going to go to the office, but then you've got to take a client out for a drink, and you're not going to go home in between, so can something do both of those situations?
Yeah.
These are things that, you know, hey, these entrepreneurs over-index in travel. They travel more. So can I create convenience for those moments? You know, I travel a lot, and when you take your shoes off on an airplane for a long ride, when you get to your destination, your feet are twice the size, right? All of a sudden, you're that moment, okay, can I solve that problem for someone? You know, now if I go out and say, hey, this shoe does this, someone's going to say, that's me.
Yeah. So you guys are really focusing on entrepreneurs and young hustlers. And how has it been, you know, obviously GaryVee's kind of like your celebrity endorser or endorsement. And how has it been getting the awareness out? Like, how are you guys really building the brand under this new
Well, Gary's
title?
a built-in advertising engine. You know, that's what's so unique is if I sign a deal with an athlete, they're going to wear my shoes on court, and I might get a tweet or a contractual 3 tweets that they may or may not do.
Right.
You know, I may get a 5-hour window to shoot an ad campaign they may or may not end up honoring. You know, I've done these deals before. Oh, wow. It's like, you know, it's not easy. Okay, Gary is the ultimate partner because he's coming to us and saying, hey, can we do another event? Wow. Hey, I want to talk to my audience in Canada. I feel like I haven't given them an opportunity to kind of either to get the shoes. Can we go to Toronto and do something? So we went to Toronto and did an event. Wow. He's delivering more than you asked for.
That's awesome.
So it's so unique. And of course, he is a built-in, he comes with the endorsement, but then his voice socially is the activation.
If there's one thing too about GaryVee, if you ever, when you follow him on Instagram and watch his videos, he gets so much engagement.
Yeah.
But he's also a little bit divisive. Some people love him. I love him.
Yeah.
And some people don't. They're like, he says fuck a lot. It's like he's really kind of brass and just like coarse.
Yeah, not everybody's cup of tea. Yeah.
Yeah. So do you think that's helped you or hurt you? And what did you think about that before you made the decision?
Well, you have to think about that.
Yeah.
When you sign an influencer, and especially if it's your only one, then one false move from that person has an impact on your brand. And you see that happen a lot, where one tweet that goes the wrong way can end a career. And so you absolutely have to think of this. And you have to really understand who this person is, what their values are. If they're gonna carry your brand on their shoulders. A little easier if you have a whole family of athletes. If one goes wrong, then you can survive a Lance Armstrong or whatever.
Right.
So yeah, I absolutely thought about that. But also at the time, going back to when I really reached out to him, that there was the sentiment was heavily positive around Gary. Now he's gotten bigger, your audience is bigger, you're going to get a little bit more of the negative sentiment. But I still don't see a ton of it. And I think his voice is so genuine, his message is so positive that if you really hate that message, then that probably says more about you than it says about him.
Well said.
And I also think that if you try, that phrase, if you try to please everyone, you end up pleasing no one. Or I say, if you try and stand for everything, you end up standing for nothing. I'd rather have a strong point of view and say, this is what we believe in. And, I'd rather focus on the strength of people who buy into that than the negativity of those who don't.
Yeah, he's definitely, his language and the way he does things is different than a lot of other people, and some people don't like. But I mean, if you've ever actually listened to anything he talks about, he's very compassionate, super empathetic. He wants everybody to really just be happy. Actually, I follow his wine club, but they just came out with an empathy wine. Well, wine is called empathy. It's like
I could tell you from firsthand experience that it isn't Gary. When we talk about the sneaker business, he's really focused on us being successful. How do I make sure that you guys get what you need out of this? What can I do more? It's not a fake Instagram hustle. It's real. I mean, I've been on the other side of it where he and I are business partners, and I see it. So, and that, I didn't know that before I signed it. That's just luck. That part of it is luck that it played out like it did. Obviously I did some good analysis up front, but you can never really predict. So I think that's been really good for us.
And so, where's the future going with signing on more entrepreneurs?
Yeah.
Are you guys looking to do this? We talked about a little bit about how you could sign on somebody who's got millions of followers, and maybe they don't even fully oblige. Are you guys staying in the macro influencer realm, or are you going to jump into some micro influencers?
Yeah, I think we've learned that getting one tweet from someone with 5 million followers does not move the needle. Mm-hmm. It just doesn't. Okay, so it makes you feel good, but this stuff is rushing by so fast that you need to have someone who's really buying into what you're doing and authentically influencing people. Like, the influence is a verb, okay? So if I have 2 million followers, it doesn't mean I'm an influencer unless I'm actually convincing my audience to do something.
Right.
Do you know what I'm saying? Like, you're an influencer only if I'm saying to you, like, hey, I got this drink you should try. It's really good. You'd love it. Now I'm influencing you. If I'm a popular person, that doesn't make me an influencer.
And it's only if I actually try the drink.
It's an active thing, right? So
or tell people about
sticking
it.
one tweet is not influencing anybody.
Yeah.
Do you understand what I'm saying? It's like we are underplaying we've set such a low bar for the word influence. Okay, now Gary's influencing people because every day he's talking about something consistently, and maybe now I listen and be like, oh, I can buy into that. Maybe I'll try his wine because I believe in him. I think the kind of X factor of influence is this little goodwill thing. Is there's certain people out there who you want to be successful, You know, there's certain people like I'll look at and go, oh, they're famous. I'm interested in what they're doing, like Kanye, okay? He's a magnet for attention. But I don't really want to help him. Personally, I'm fascinated by him, but I'm not going to give him anything because I want him to succeed. I don't relate to him like that. Where there's other people who have a smaller audience, if they say, hey, I've come out with this project, I'm like, I support you, I'm in.
Yeah.
Do you know what I'm saying? And that's why Gary's able to sell sneakers and to sell wine, is because his audience want to give him value back. So this goodwill factor is like totally underappreciated or under-recognized as what makes two influencers, one good and one bad.
And, you know, just about building a brand, I think that's the goodwill that you're talking about, the authenticity that you're talking about. Those are really big keys to building a solid brand with really good engagement. Yeah. What else are you guys doing? And I know you're doing a lot of different things with the podcast and the show to show transparency. Yeah. What else are you guys doing to be able to build that brand and engagement in the community really at large? Yeah,
community is the key word. I'm glad you said that because it used to be traffic. Okay, so I've been in marketing for many years and it was all about traffic. How many eyeballs can I drive? Okay, so then it sort of became, I want to drive an audience, and it was all about content. Okay, so don't just drive an audience to a picture, now entertain the audience.
Right.
But I think the real game is community, is this area of now, is it bi-directional value that's being exchanged and a relationship that's built with people that's personal to people, not just the product. Okay, so and someone said this the other day. I can't remember who it was. It wasn't my idea, but it was said, it's not how many people come, it's who stays. That's the difference between traffic and community. Okay, and it's the people who stay that are going to make or break your brand. The reason that they stay is if they're emotionally connected. Okay, and and the way you can be emotionally connected is when the brand is not just talking about shoes, but saying, hey, we stand for inspiring and outfitting entrepreneurs, and let me interview an entrepreneur and bring that content to you and give that value to you. Now someone's like, wow, I listen to K-Swiss because they bring stories to me about other inspiring entrepreneurs. Okay, so now I've got an emotional connection with them. So there's a reason we're doing things like the podcast, and also a little bit about brand transparency. It's like, let's show people who we are as people, you know, and I think that's a little bit of a differentiator against our biggest competition. So again, another competitive strategy is to use your opponent's strengths as against them. Mm-hmm. So I could say, man, I'm never going to beat these big brands because they're so much bigger than me. That's their competitive advantage. But if I'm transparent and nimble and fast and give you access into our team, now my small size is an advantage, because they can't do that because their PR team's not going to sign off on it. And, you know, I made a podcast studio here. I just did it on my own. I didn't ask anybody. I just did it, and I bought the stuff off Amazon, the foam, and I made it, and everyone came in the next day and was like, oh, we have a podcast studio.
Yeah, it's awesome studio, by the way. I got to congratulate you. Great stuff in there.
Thank you. But you understand, you couldn't do that in a big corporation.
Right, you have to get 45 people to sign off.
Okay, so if you're a small company, don't just look at the competition as, oh, they're much bigger than me, I've got no chances. Make their weight count against them. And for me, brand transparency and access is one of the ways that our size can be an advantage. Because the more you get to know us, whether it's Omar, who runs our social media, or Patrick, our head of marketing, or Homie, who is one of our designers, who have strong social followings, they're social personalities on their own outside of K-Swiss, the more you get to know them, the more you're going to understand, like, wow, I love this brand because of the people who are in it. So I'm trying to put them on the pedestal as much as, and tell their stories, because it's not about vanity. It's about, I believe that's how brands can get emotional connections with consumers. And when you do that, you build community, which is one of the biggest currencies now of brand building, in my opinion.
Absolutely. You know, it's funny about your community. I had a few minutes with Omar before we got here, and you know, you brought him on, and he's very entrepreneurial in spirit and had his own business, and you guys brought him in.
Yeah.
And he said something interesting, which was that a lot of the people in here have that entrepreneurial spirit. Yeah. They really want to grow this company, and they have ownership. I don't know, is that something you look for when you hired them, or is it something you guys instill in the culture?
I am now. I think also the other interesting thing is, we were on, this brand was on its knees. We were in survival mode 2-3 years ago. 3 years ago, 2016 was like survival mode, and I asked our investors, who's our ownership company, like, how long do I have? You gave me this job, I appreciate it. How long do I have to get something done? They said a year.
Wow.
So
you had a deadline. If you didn't do it,
it was unofficially whispered in my ear, you got a year. I said, level with me. You have a year. Okay, well, immediately you become an entrepreneur. All right. And the pressures are on. And I think that's probably the best thing that happened to me, is that somebody said that, because it made me go immediately into high change mode.
Yeah.
Do you know what I'm saying? So it didn't, let's just play this out and try this. It was like, pull the emergency alarm. Everything's got to change today. I've got 12 months or I'm out of my ear. So
I love that, because one of the things is sometimes people go, how do you accomplish your goals, and how do you do so much all at the same time? And I always look at goals, and sometimes you have a 10-year goal, and you're like, I'd love to build K-Swiss to $1 billion company, maybe, right? And somebody goes, you have 12 months or it's over.
Yeah.
Your entire company, we're getting rid of it.
It focuses you real quick. I tell you that. And it was ultimately really good for me. I would say that was probably the one thing that didn't feel good at the time, but it's the reality of anyone who's in business at a high level, whether you're an entrepreneur or not, is that's the truth. You operate with that pressure. And if you don't like it, get out of it.
Yeah.
Okay, so I put myself in that position, so I'm good with it, but it was great tactic for them to tell me that, because it really got me focused. At that time, being in survival mode, you take, to some degree, I didn't have a really high bar on personnel, because you're wanting people to, it's not a good situation for people. It's a survival situation, there's layoffs, there's budget cuts.
Right.
Now we've got a bit of mojo. You could be a bit more selective. So now I'm recruiting for that kind of personality type, for sure, because you need believers, you need entrepreneurs to make a brand like this work. You can't have any baggage. You can't have someone 50% in. You need everyone to be 100% on board to have any chance of succeeding. If you respect our competition as much as we do, they're going to run us over with ease if we're not the best we can be every day.
Yeah.
So I don't need people saying like, hey, when's my job title changing? Or I need people come in and be like, how do I win today? That's the people I need. And I feel like I've got that now.
And that's almost just the same thing you're saying yourself as an entrepreneur running this company. You're saying, how can I win today? Because especially for that first year, if you lose, you might lose everything. Yeah. And so you have to make sure you're winning.
And I feel like that's a rolling 12 months, by the way. That's the way I operate. It's like that didn't end after the year. It's like we have a long way to go before we get to where we're trying to be. I think we've got some nice shoots growing up here, and our results have turned around. We have a nice year this year. We're a long way to go. We're by no means made it. This is a live case study, not a case study of after the fact. We're in the middle of it,
So, be grateful for what you have, but still hustle for what you want, right?
For sure. Yeah, exactly. And we don't celebrate the wins that much, because I always feel like we're not where we need to be, but, we'll take 30 seconds to say we had a good year, and then we'll move on to 19.
And you've turned it around a lot. Since 2016, and that's probably when you signed GaryVee, and that's when I started hearing about it, and then got more sales. Yeah, we'll
be profitable this year for the first time in many years. We've turned around a big loss into a decent profit. We're double-digit revenue growth globally. So there's definitely some good signs financially. But like I said, we're a long way from where we feel like this brand can be, and so we're still pushing real hard.
And just looking at what some common mistakes, maybe mistakes you guys have even made along the path. What are some of the most common mistakes people do around trying to build the brand, and that causes them to ultimately fail? And how do you learn from that? Anything you learn from that?
Yeah, I think you've got to be really, focus on what the market's doing, and not rely on just your own worldview or your gut feel. I think we've learned lessons, and we operated like that for a bit. And we learned some hard lessons around pricing, for example, something that you wouldn't necessarily look at that closely. When you talk about 30,000 foot branding, we've talked about branding a lot, an emotional brand connection. You've also got to get real tactical.
Yeah.
For example, our pricing was slightly in a key channel, slightly above Adidas's at one point, and no one had really noticed that until one of our sales reps was like, "Wait a minute, how are we going to win if we're slightly more expensive than a competitor that's way stronger than us with a comparable product?" And we were like, good point, that's crazy, you know, and we made the change. So we learned that lesson, that you've got, and you've got to be in the market, seeing what's going on, analyzing it, and reacting really fast all the time. So there's one little example.
Have you experienced any big failures, and how do you deal with failure yourself?
We've experienced a lot of failures.
Most successful people have, right?
Yeah, and I'm not somebody who loves, people are like, I love failure. Gary's like, I love failing and fail fast. I don't, I don't like losing. I never have, but I've done my share of it. I think, we made a lot of mistakes in this journey. I think the key is, don't make it twice. So if something goes wrong, that's okay to do it once, but understand what happened and make the right changes, and also have plan Bs, and pivot, be able to pivot fast. So you only know if you made a mistake if you're measuring, what I'm talking about by being in the market and really measuring on a constant basis. Otherwise, you could be wrong and not know it for 12 months. You've got to know it as soon as you can, and then you've got to have the kind of the guts to change it really fast, to make that price change, or to, sometimes you fall in love with things that are your idea.
Totally.
And you don't want to let them go, and you've got to cut things off that even you came up with. Yeah. Really hard to do, but you've got to make that change fast. And someone said to me, you've got to act like a doctor, not a parent. And a doctor,
what do you mean? Yeah.
Well, a doctor reads symptoms unemotionally and prescribes a fix. A parent doesn't read symptoms unemotionally. They sugarcoat things. They give too much. Oh, my Timmy is that's not him. He would never do that. And I'm going to get. You're wearing rose-tinted glasses, and you're not making the best decision. You're making emotional decisions, not factual decisions. And so, by acting like a doctor, it means act unemotionally when it comes to analyzing the success or failure of projects. And if something's not working, admit it's not working. Really hard to do. Yeah. And I think that's one mistake we made, is we were sort of emotionally hanging on to something we just really wanted to work, and it wasn't, and we didn't admit it was. People said, like, that's not working. I'm like, no, it's working. It's working.
I think it's funny because I'm definitely, that I learned the hard way.
Yeah.
And one of the things is when you fail, it's not that you are a failure. You have to kind of understand that sometimes small goals that you have that you might fail at, what is the underlying motivation or inspiration for you to do that?
Yeah.
For me, if I were to fail at, doing a podcast, well, the underlying motivation was to help other people, and there's a lot of other stuff, but I really like the podcast medium. But if I were to fail, then, I committed to 2 years. So I'm like, I prevented failure right there for at least 2 years. But the whole thing is that my message is what I'm trying to get out there. So I do, motivational speaking. I always find some other way to pivot to do it.
Yep.
And for me, I've never looked at failure as I am a failure. It's not who I am. It's just something that I learned from. But making that decision quickly allows you to take more action faster and get more done.
Exactly. And that's what it's about, is how do you react to these situations and know it's happening and go to plan B, pivot really fast. Act like a doctor, not a parent would be my advice there. And look, it's easy to go on Instagram and see 10 really successful people. Okay, what you're not seeing is the million people who are like getting crushed and soul destroyed and failing and not, working, 3 jobs to try and put food on the table and it's not succeeding, or they're burning through their money. Yeah. No one's putting that shit on Instagram. Okay, so we also are in this little bit of a false world where we think everybody's doing great and it's easy to win. It's not. It's years and years in many cases. Most people you see who are successful are years. You see GaryVee. Wow, he came out of nowhere. Yeah, he came out of nowhere after 10 years of earning 30 to 50 grand a year working in a liquor store. Or you know what I'm saying? Like, most people who are succeeding, you don't see the backstory. It's like the band that suddenly has a number one hit. You're like, wow, they're a one-hit wonder. You didn't see them touring in really
like the
bad pubs for many years.
Yeah, the
exactly.
Beatles played 7 days a week, 12 hours a day. People wouldn't sign up. They said they were horrible, and all of a sudden, they're the best ever.
Right, best ever.
It's like, what happened? Oh, they got this one hit song, and that was it. No, they put in the work.
Yeah, if they can do it, then what about why is my band not doing well? Well, how much blood, sweat, and tears have you put in? And it's like I said, it's very easy to make it seem like the bar of success is low, and it isn't. Yeah. Is the bottom line.
And I think
so
also
don't beat yourself up about it. That's my message here. It's not trying to demotivate people. It's saying like, keep going. These are, I call it, K-Swiss will be an overnight success that took 10 years.
That's good. And I think too, people expect it to happen now.
Yeah.
I'm very much like that. I want it to happen now, but I realize, Gary Vee actually says this a lot, is like micro speed, macro patience. But for me too, I'm always trying to get as much done as possible, but understanding that, Rome wasn't built in a day. Understanding that as I shifted careers and, from orthodontics to more of an entrepreneur, and I'm still an orthodontist, but as I did that, it took me 10 years to become an orthodontist.
Right.
It wasn't easy, it wasn't fast in any way. So the fact that I spent the last 5 years of my life transitioning into different things, I'm not surprised, but it's really hard for people to stay motivated. And actually, as you're going through this, and you've been hit with some self-doubt and, trying to convince other people to do it and then convince consumers and everybody else, how do you stay motivated?
I think, I've thought about this a lot actually, and I think there's a couple things. Is I have a natural anxiety strain in me, okay, which if you understand anxiety, it's always worrying about the future or what's coming next. So I'm not casual about like, everything will be okay. It's like, if I don't succeed today, my future could be in jeopardy. I'm going to struggle in the future if I don't get it today. So I'm always really conscious about doing my best. And that comes from, from not, that's a negative thing in essentially, but really I think it's a bit of a power if controlled in the right way. So I've definitely thought about this and realized I could love to tell you a great story about why I'm so relentlessly pushing my whole career and why I'm driven. And some of it's probably the fact that I have anxiety, a controlled anxiety, but I have it. So that's number one. And number two is I'm hyper competitive. And again, that's not always a good thing. If you have my competitive nature as a kid, I was awful to play sports against. I was that kid that was too competitive and was like nasty. Yeah. And I wasn't that good at sport. So it's one thing if I was...
if you were good, it'd be a little bit better.
No, I wasn't that good, but I just, I was hyper competitive. I'm sure that is a driver. And I don't know where that's from, or it doesn't matter where it's from, but it's just that is a factor in me, is like, I don't like to lose and I don't like giving up. So you got to have a bit of that in you as well. So
with anxiety, interesting that you brought that up as your motivator. So I've been doing a lot more things outside of my box, outside of my comfort zone. And I was explaining how I felt to a friend of mine who's a full-blown entrepreneur for years. And he's like, oh yeah, I have anxiety all the time. Yeah. And I was like, what? Yeah. I don't have anxiety. And I was like, oh my God, like I didn't even realize what was going on. And because as a kid, everything was in my control. Right? So in sports and school, it was work hard, get the result, study for a test, ace the test. In sports, sometimes you win, you lose, but I always felt like I was doing the best that I could and it was in my control. And so I felt this pressure in me, right? Yeah. And it was more of a driving force, but in such a positive way. Fast forward, 10 years later, I'm trying this stuff where it's like, if this doesn't work out, like, I'll be okay. But to me, it's like, make it or break it. I'm either going to do this and it's going to work and this entire business is going to be amazing, or it's not and my life's over kind of thing. And the worst part is that I do everything that I can and then I have to give it to somebody else and be like, okay, is it going to work? And I felt like I had no control. Then I started getting anxiety. Yeah. And I was suffering from it, and it was debilitating. So debilitating anxiety, where you're constantly worrying and not actually getting any work done. So a couple of weeks of this, and I'm just like, what's going on? I'm very self-aware, very in tune to my emotions. And finally, when someone said that to me about anxiety, I was like, you know what? If I switch the words around a little bit, can I focus that anxiety, understanding that I'm worried about what's happening in the future, like you said, controlling it, and then pushing it as an energy force into doing more action.
Yeah, and then then it becomes a power, because you're going to because if you're out thinking everyone, people with anxiety don't like unknowns, so you over plan so that there aren't any. Okay, so you always are the one on the traveling who knows where you're going, what's booked, how you're going to get from the airport. Your wheels are always turning. Right. Well, that's a pretty good thing to have when you're in business, because you're constantly, looking into the future about what's happening. It can be super negative if you let it override everything. So, I think Eckhart Tolle from The Power of Now is, rides on my, is riding the journey with me, because that's really created a good balance, and I got it. I'm fine. I don't suffer from it. I wouldn't say I suffer from it at all. I have done in my past, but
for someone else who might be suffering, like, what is something you do to control it?
Well, I've just learned to sort of live in this moment. I think that's the key. Is anything that's that you're thinking about the future is made up. It's not real. You're guessing. 100%. I can't tell you what's going to happen in 5 minutes. So if I worry about what might happen in 5 minutes, and then create a scenario and that concerns me, not only am I'm going to worry about what's coming, but I'm going to come up with the worst case scenario and think that's probably what's going to happen.
That's what we always do, right?
So as long as you understand that that's fake, and the only truth is what's happening in this moment. This is the only truth. Then that's how you do it, and you've got to study it. You've got to do like Headspace, go on the App Store, sign up for Headspace, do 10 minutes every day. It's transformative. And then The Power of Now as a book is an umbrella kind of philosophy behind some of those practical things you'll do in Headspace. Headspace just is a fun, 10 minutes of relaxation. The Power of Now tells you kind of why you're doing that. The combination of those two things, I think, can be transformative if you really want it. I think I'd say is, like, if you're listening to this podcast, and especially if you're still listening after we've been blabbing all this time, then you're on the right path. Like, you're investing in yourself, you're studying, you're listening, you're learning. Like, most people aren't. Most people are just going to sit and complain about why things aren't working for them. You're one of the few people that's actually trying to kind of add to your arsenal of skills or motivation. So you're already way ahead.
I love that. And as we wrap up, I was wondering, what is the best piece of advice you can give to people out there, trying to focus their brand and build their community?
Well, I guess, thematically, I'd say, look for the open space. That's probably some of the most powerful things I've probably done. It's a little 30,000 foot, but it is important, is, really understand, what it is that you're the only one at. Find something that is an open lane for you, and keep working until you can position yourself into something unique, and lean in on that. There's another expression I've used a lot, which is, if you can't be first, be different. So I think that's really important. So, and I think sometimes people just bypass that stuff and go straight to the product. And it's worth spending the time on setting up that big picture before you go too far down the path.
I really, really like that and appreciate it. I can't leave this interview without asking, just, how would somebody as an entrepreneur get involved with K-Swiss? And if you guys are going to be hiring, more influencers and entrepreneurs, like I mentioned earlier, but I have this, drive over here, I had this vision for all these different shoe sneakers, and I thought they would be really cool. and I got this phrase, inspire, impact, and empower, which is something that's really motivating to me. I have a neon sign of it that my family made for me for my 30th birthday, actually, because I believe that you need to get inspired to do something. And then when you're inspired, you go make an impact on your own life, and then you're able to empower others with what you've learned so that they can do the same.
You pitching me a sneaker right now?
I mean, if it was supposed to be in 15 to 20 seconds, that was it. So if it's somebody like me...
I know what you're doing, don't worry. No, I think the bottom line of collaboration is you've got to bring an audience, you've got to bring value to the table. Okay, so this is, I'm not talking about you specifically, anyone. What is it that you're bringing to the brand you want to collaborate with that they don't have themselves? That could be an audience, it could be credibility in an area, or some sort of cultural area that you're an expert in. But ultimately, these days, it's largely audience. So I think for me, first thing I'm looking at is, okay, who wants to work with us, and do they have a highly engaged audience that's at a size that's worth me getting involved with? Now, it doesn't have to be millions at this point, because we know that macro influencers who are not, relentlessly influencing are not as good as a small guy who's really buys into what you're doing. Who's the audience? How engaged are they? And what value are you bringing to the table? That's the key. People often ask me like, hey, I want to do a shoe, and I go look at their Instagram. They got 500 followers. I'm like, get to a few tens of thousands, build your audience. And the way you do that is by creating great value for them. Mm-hmm. That's how you generate an audience. And then once you build that, then come, and people actually will probably come to you.
Nice. So you guys are actually going to be actively looking for other entrepreneurs to start some new lines. Is that that's
the vision? Sure. I mean, in the same way that other brands have athlete families, we will have an entrepreneur family.
Oh, that's really exciting.
Yeah.
Really, really exciting. Barney, this has been amazing. I want to ask you, where can we all find you online?
Well, obviously K-Swiss, all the regular channels. We have, our Facebook page. We put a lot of our content there. Obviously our Instagram, YouTube. We have a show called Inside K-Swiss where we show video of the stuff we're doing in the building. Our podcast, which is CEOs Wear Sneakers on Apple Podcasts. You can find that there. And then myself, I'm on Instagram at Barney Waters, or LinkedIn. I'm a bit more active on there now as well. So
awesome.
Get me anywhere, reach out. I usually reply. I'm not very famous, so don't have too many followers that I can't reply. So
well, you're doing an amazing job, and I'm sure as you continue to build your brand, you're going to become more and more famous yourself because of all the amazing things you're doing. The last question is, you've achieved incredible success turning this company around over the last 2.5, 3 years. For you, what is the next level of success?
I wanted this to be a sustained growth, sustained profitability. I think turning around once is you got to live with it for a bit to make sure it's sustainable and momentum builds, and eventually when you go over that tipping point, the momentum runs itself and you end up keeping up with it. I think once that momentum's going on its own, I'll feel like, okay, we're getting somewhere. So the story's not done here on what we're doing, and maybe at some point down the line I'll look for another one to fix. We'll see.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for coming on Unleash Success.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
If you enjoyed the show and learned something of value, the one ask that I have is please go subscribe, whether you're on iTunes, Spotify, or YouTube. And if you leave us a 5-star rating or review, that absolutely helps us get our message out there. Each week, I'm going to continue to interview amazing people, and we're going to break down their tools and strategies to help get you real results. Feel free to visit the website, unleashsuccess.com, and subscribe to our newsletter so you get updates each week. And remember, knowing is not enough. Knowledge alone is not power. Action is. Because action is the only way you're going to get the results you want in life and truly live the life of your dreams. So take some action, subscribe to the podcast today, and get ready to unleash success in you.